Wait, remember Skyland? A French and Canadian show that feels like it snuck its way into worldwide distribution and syndication, where there were a lot of other really popular cartoons at the time, making it seem like this show was more or less buried upon arrival depending on the region you saw it. While having its origins made in France, the syndication deals led the show to come out in English for me in the States on the Nickelodeon sister channel, the Nicktoon Network. The show boasts a unique look, but something that breeds familiarity. With it coming out the same year as programs like Avatar: The Last Airbender, you can kind of feel some similarities in character design and world building, but here having been done in 3D animation. When it comes to sci-fi action adventure that takes a different approach to what that means, Skyland sets itself apart from other shows around it at the time, and other shows or media with similar concepts. So today, I thought it would be fun to look into a small but ambitious show that utilized an animation style, some motion capture, and more complex facial animation work to make something all its own at that time. Let's see what Skyland has to offer.
Life will never be the same again.
Skyland is set in the 23rd century with an Earth that has seen some sort of devastation, with chunks of the land fragmented into various sized land masses that orbit around its gravitational center. A really cool way to set up the story in a familiar setting that looks and feels completely unique, still having this green and blue vibe to what seems like the aftermath of something awful as time passed. But this world, while having incredibly developed lore, has a lot of crumbs left of society that plays into new rules and ideologies. The Skyland itself is under control by the Sphere, which is this organization that controls the natural resources left, specifically the most important one left, water, fending back against those that stand to bring down their power with Guardians, these special ability-based humans called Saiyans, and they are manipulated and trained like this from young ages, and have powers such as telekinesis or electrical manipulation, and that's just to name a few of the abilities possible, with our two main characters, Mahad, voiced by Tim Hamaguchi and motion captured by Julian Gerbig, who is the older brother to Lena, voiced by Phoebe McCauley, and motion captured by Christelle Ovard, who is the younger sister. These two have a main goal of trying to rescue their mother, who is taken by the Sphere, as these kids now work together with a group of pirates that rescued them, with the younger sister having special abilities as a Saiyan. Having to learn how to fully control them as Mahad aids in where he can, from being this tough fighter, older protective brother, a great pilot, and he has this cool boomerang as a bonus weapon of choice. With a simple enough to understand goal, the show has a nice group of supporting characters that help build bonds and relationships as the show goes on. But what the show will really build up story-wise is this connection to the sibling's mom, as she opens the show with narration, and with time going on, we find out about her past, this connection that she has to both her daughter's powers and the main bad guy of the show, Oslo, who just has the perfect Mr. Clean but as a villain look. It has all of these building blocks to be great, from setting up a story full of mystery, action, and sci-fi goodness, while trying to use some more sophisticated technology to produce the show, which is actually pretty interesting to look into, so let's check into the production of Skyland.
On the next Skyland, Mila's secret powers are revealed. Catch the next Skyland tomorrow night at 9.
Skyland was created by these three dudes, and out of respect, I'm already scared of butchering any name on here, but these are the co-creators responsible, with Emmanuel being where this all really started from. Emmanuel specifically was working in general on some ideas regarding the concept of exploding planets and a fragmented universe, working for Ubisoft in New York at the time, but there was something here that can really come together with the rest of this group. These initial concept sketches would start developing into fleshed out ideas for a story to bloom from, but they knew that whatever this was becoming, it had to be what they considered high-end, something that had a lot of thought behind it, from the writing and the designing level to the animation and how it's made. Getting to work developing something further in Paris specifically, the idea expanded thanks to inspiration and an obsession with the Paris landscape, picturing the water, canal, and bridges with the concept of this bottomless abyss with clouds flowing in and out. The look and feelings of what Paris had to offer became the inspirational search of design that would help guide the visual look of the show, at least at its most basic form. The world itself was starting to take shape, not only in the look but in the way it operates, and how traversal could make sense in a world so broken. To then build a story into this, family seemed to be the core factor. How does that look or operate? It was genuinely pretty introspective in its conception. When we look further into his ideas, where certain points of the show would come from, it stems from him having a feeling that individualism and superconnectivity will make people suffer from loneliness, thinking that this would cause forgetfulness towards universal love, empathy, and other feelings that unite us beyond these barriers of real connection that was there. But not just between person to person, but from people to nature, with the world coming undone in the show, metaphorically and physically, waiting for a reason to be whole again. It was beginning to form into this grand epic scale of action and storytelling, sprawling with a limited cast of characters and plenty of room to explore different territories, making sure that the story doesn't suffer from too much dilution, and has some room to breathe. When we get down to the lore, the ideas of what happened to this world, we look back to the early thoughts of natural resources having been all used up, and seeing the world with the lack of water. But the sci-fi part of this all comes from an extra layer of details that are linked to these more evolved humans, the Saiyans, who have powers like electrical abilities, mind reading, and manipulation, plus a whole bunch more thanks to absorbing sunlight in as a source to recharge these powers. Now, in terms of development of bringing the show its looks, it focused on combining both 2D and 3D animation, a technique that was becoming a lot more popular and used to create something that marries the two together. Thanks to 9 Story Entertainment in Canada and Method Films in France, the show was able to still have this hand-drawn look to it while still playing in a 3D space, with Kadara, a Canadian-based developer for character animation, allowing them to create the character movements through motion capture, adding in a more human-like feel. There was a clear want to play in both the traditional when it comes to making the show, but also adapting and experimenting with newer technology, or as they put it, a mixture of theater, cinema, and animation. Why motion capture? Because directing full-body movement felt like cinema, allowing for a more theatrical performance. So it's not just the voice performance that counts and what they were looking for, but the embodiment of these characters overall. How do they walk, talk, and act? The challenge that would come off from this would be localizing and changing voice actors to fit the languages of the regions, which could be an issue when matching that with the full body performance. And if it doesn't work, then you lose that connection of a performance being vocally and physically at the same level they should be. Beyond this, details in the design of the characters' outfits as well were really taken into account, thinking about what they would be wearing, but more importantly, what they would need to be wearing to deal with the differing heights and elevation, dealing with the colder temperature and more, with Japanese inspiration for stuff like the cargo pants design, as well as trying to make sure what they do wear fits into the current landscape of the world. It's a completely different place. You need to survive. So just like how this would take a major precedent in a traditional film, details like that were not lost when working on this animation. Suffice to say that there was on every level a lot of thought that went into the production at each point of the process. Now, when the show would finally come together and begin its premiere run, it would make its way to the US on the Nicktoon Network, which is where I clearly first was introduced to it. Personally, with what did surround it, along with a lack of enough promotion for awareness, it was something I never really got too much into. Especially during the time of the first season airing, I was dealing with moving and family-related stuff that didn't aid in me really looking into it or caring that much about it at that time. Going and checking it out now, seeing what was there and learning about this shattered world, it definitely would have been something more up my alley, as I think the show was a pretty decent watch, specifically in terms of a few things, so let me dig into them. The world of the show is genuinely fascinating. I really love the look of it, how bright and widespread it feels, especially amongst a landscape where imaginative ideas with settings can easily blend together. This show strikes a really cool idea both practically and visually. It really opens the door for so much lore just based off the world itself, but this in a lot of ways can backfire as all of this became my main focus and interest throughout the show, more so than the characters and many parts of the main story. Maybe mixing that with the dialogue written in the show, whether that be from the translation or for any changes made, it sometimes does not result in true caring for what's happening on the screen. The story itself plays into a lot of tropes seen in plenty of other shows, whether they follow a similar base premise or not, so the real standout quickly becomes the visuals and the world of the show, which for me still was fine. I feel that overall it was watchable and completely fine, but for others, I can't speak to that fact other than it not being a larger hit in the US. If you take away the two things I think work the most, you're left with story plot points that we've seen before and dialogue that can leave much to be desired. Lore is great. It's how I get invested into so many things, especially some of my favorite shows, movies, and video games of all time. But it can't only rely on great lore to hold every other piece of the show up. Same can be said with the visuals. While being a show on a kids network and aimed for a younger demographic, it just feels like it wanted to say so much more. All of the reasons Emmanuel brings up in regards to his inspirations and ideas felt like they were on the cusp of fully coming to fruition, but couldn't go further on some of these things because of the nature of a kids show, not opening a larger reach out for older audiences to take a lot away from. Again, thanks to the dialogue and a good portion of the writing. When feeling this disconnect from characters like this that are supposed to be the main leads that we want to root for over the course of the show, they just feel a little bit underdeveloped and less interesting than they could be. Visually, I like the look of the outfits, and I think they fit into a world that has such a creative design, whether it be the vehicles or the landscapes. All of it looks fantastic, accompanied by a great score that knows how to sonically paint a scene and help build this relationship with the viewer. It's a shame that the things that aren't up to the same level of the things that really work don't get close to those heights. It just feels so close to being something so great that not watching it would be a crime, but people didn't tune in. And for that, the show may not have ended on the note it wanted to. Or the motion capture performances creeped you out enough that you didn't really want to watch it. I can see that too. But let's take a look at what happened to the show.
On a special 1 hour Skyland, Oslo captures Meehan.
You and I are meant to be together.
Special 1 hour Skyland, tomorrow night at 9.
After 2 seasons with 26 episodes in total, the show would come to an end. We can sit here and claim this or that or just assume cancellation being the most common case, but as far as what is to be believed by Emmanuel commenting on this himself, mentioning that it was a lack of money, and clearly the show looked and felt like a lot of moving parts were happening, with new technology produced across the globe in a few areas, so cost was definitely a factor. It was just pricey to produce. With the claimed inspiration of both Star Wars and the works of Miyazaki, the ambitious visions do play a factor in it being such a hard show for anyone to say yes to continue at the time, against what viewership it had. Emmanuel's potential comments here are from 2017 and came from a video that no longer exists, meaning this screenshot of the comment is our only proof of it, so a grain of salt should always be taken. Another avenue that they took the series was of course finding ways of merchandising the property, but rather than having action figures or video games like most would have, the series instead would only have a series of 3 books, written based on it, all written by David Carlisle, which is a fake name and were initially written and released for Spain. Overall, there was love for the series. While you may not see a large push online for it to be constantly remembered or brought up, the show did have and still does have a fan base of people who enjoyed this imaginative world that was created. Even critically at the time, the show would win awards, with 2 of its awards being Gemini Awards given to those working on the show for the categories of Best Animated Program or Series and Best Original Music Score for an Animated Program or Series. Like I said, there was a quality factor here that they wanted to go for, and it showed both with the audience and with the critics, just in some ways more than others. I do want to really emphasize what a cool world this show was built upon, with the concept and ideas feeling grander than the characters themselves. While I think the performances, technology, and thoughtfulness on their creation was really fascinating, and I still enjoyed everything with the version I watched of it, they all just feel overshadowed by the nature of the world built. No personality or conflict took my attention enough away from the scope or lore being built, which is not a bad thing, but it's still a massive enough disconnect from me to the main characters that I can see that being a reason for some to tune it out and not be as interested. One of their main goals was to have a smaller cast to really focus on building that interest in them, but at the same time, they needed plenty of different people to show off the expansiveness of the world and just how vast it is. It felt like a balancing issue of striking that right amount of focus on the main characters to truly make them a bit more compelling than they were. Instead, to me, they felt like vessels to show me a world that was masterfully thought out, and I can understand where that pulls people out. But at the end of the day, it still ended up working for me. Despite how cool it may be though, mixing in a lack of money and some hard viewership to pull in within certain territories stories, Skyland sadly went away faster than it surely deserved. But on a hopeful note, Emmanuel did note that not only does he hope to make a feature-length movie from this property, but already has a fully written script that is ready to go, leaving off with his initial points of connectivity. If all the fans build a connection with each other, we may be able to make it happen. If you are a fan of the show, make your voice heard. Talk about it with others, and before you go, talk about it in the comments below as well. What are your thoughts on Skyland? Were you into the look of it? Would you want to see a feature-length film come from it? Let me know. Thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Later.